Serious? What's something you know about someone else that if the information became public it would ruin their life? A guy I work with confessed a lot to me about how many times he cheated on his partner, with both male and females. I'm not sure why he told me because we're not particularly close. He's now broken up with that partner for one of the girls he cheated with. He's a bit of a dong and is bad mouthing his old partner a lot, telling some things I know to be lies, and turning people against her. It's tempting to let it slip. My ex did this to me. I say let it slip. A former friend of mine became Christian and wore it on his sleeve. He has always been a pathological liar. His ex-wife's sister moved in with them. At some point he got his sister-in-law pregnant and made her have an abortion after adding her to his insurance. He also contracted an STD either from her or age he would frequent. His wife left him after finding out about everything. He insists that the sister-in-law appeared on his insurance forms by mistake because the insurance company mixed up the numbers and that he got an STD from masturbating in public toilets. I promised his soon-to-be ex-wife I would not tell anyone who knows him, so this is a pretty safe place to spill the beans. I'm actually kind of amused that he thought I masturbate in public toilets frequently enough to have gotten ill from doing so was in and of itself a reasonable thing to say. Previous boss used to pick up H and have sex with them at work after hours. He's a preacher and has been married for a long time. About 11-12 years ago I was working at a trucking company doing general office stuff, data entry, and recruiting. Anyway, 2 of the dispatchers were cheating on their spouses. Both were married with kids. I'm not sure how my co-worker found out exactly, but he snooped the guy's email and noticed the conversations the 2 cheaters had with each other, then showed me. Apparently they hooked up on their lunch breaks a lot. I looked up their Facebook profiles a year or so ago and they never got divorced, so I assume they were never discovered. Make a burner Facebook and leave a comment about cheating. A few years back I got hit on by a high-ranking employee, the kind with a 3-letter acronym as a job title of a very well-known bank, on an extremely hardcore BDSM-themed hookup website. He mentioned vaguely what his job was and I reverse image searched the headshot he sent me of himself. It was easy to see where he'd gotten the fake name he gave me, derived loosely from his real one. He was into some strange stuff. I don't know if it would actually ruin his life, but it's really funny to me that it happened. He didn't have any idea that I identified him, but I backed out pretty quick. This is pretty common in this field as well as other that have a high-stress jobs. I know an individual whose professional resume is a complete work of fiction. I also know that same individual is guilty of insurance fraud. 2 telephone calls could probably ruin their life. My grandma had planned to run away from her husband by taking the mortgage payment and depositing it into a private bank account instead of paying it. She did this for about 6 months, so when she did run off, she would leave him with a delinquent house payment. Luckily he had very good lawyers and she had to pay it all back, but if anyone knew she was that kind of person, especially since my grandpa is the nicest person ever, she would get some hate for it. I only found this out just recently and was told to never tell a soul, but catch me spilling it to thousands of internet strangers. A guy I knew in high school sodomized a 4-year-old when he was in middle school. Same guy also had a serious thing for his grandpa, and would often sneak into his room and molest said grandpa. Was also freaking his cousin. Cousin was a dude as well, which started when they were both 10 and 11 respectively, if I recall correctly, and literally only stopped about a year ago at age 17. And only because his boyfriend at the time forced him to stop. I legitimately feel insanely sorry for this guy and he obviously needs help, but the thing about the 4YO just absolutely shocked me and makes me so angry. Don't know what I would do if I ever saw this kid again. He is still in HS. I graduated a year ago. Please tell the cops, especially if this guy is nobody to you. An individual I know has shown me how he beats the random drug testing at his company. He is one of the highest positions there, bringing in more as a Christmas bonus than my household makes in a year. One phone call, he loses everything. I'm not sure if it could now since the statute of limitations has likely passed, but my old horse trainer was abusive. She hit me, said awful confidence damaging things, and gave me alcohol. Not to mention all the borderline sexual comments she'd make about me while I was like 11. She ended up digging herself in a bit of a hole though, and I don't think I was the only one, despite the fact that nothing got to the police. My mom cheated on my father during her midlife crisis and was basically catfishing some poor dudes out there. Not for money. I even heard her false name and knew that she had an Ashley Madison account. I assume she's been done with it for a while, but it's not the worst thing she's done. OMG. Till there was an actual woman on Ashley Madison. My friend's dad raped her as a teenager. He also got me extremely drunk a few times and felt me up, got me naked, attempted to initiate sex. I've been keeping quiet because I don't want to force my friend to start talking about it before she's ready. She recently told her stepmom and her stepmom ended up siding with her dad. I'm tempted to tell my side of things to the stepmom, but she doesn't really like me and I worry I'd just be stirring more crap up for my friend. At the same time though, I feel like maybe it would be worth it just to plant a little seed of doubt in the stepmom. I really don't know. Speak out. He likely has done it to other girls and you can add credence to your friend's confession. You both should get support in dealing with this. A former friend of mine met her husband while she was prostituting herself on Craigslist. I don't know if he was one of her customers, or if he even knows. She's a teacher now. Wouldn't necessarily ruin their life, but I would never share this information. If anyone remembers DashCon, that Tumblr convention that went to heck in a handbasket, there was one anonymous soul who bravely popped the ball pit. I'm one of the few people in this world who knows who that soul is. I request an AMA with the DashCon popper. By the time I was old enough to understand that I'd experienced sexual abuse, I also understood that telling anyone would ruin the abuser's life. Despite all that happened, I didn't want that. I never told. At this point both the abuser and anyone else to whom it would have mattered has passed away. I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope life has treated you well. My former boss from my last job was Dong. He was the youngest person in management and because of this, he bullied his way around to get to where he was, which also meant being a douche to a lot of his employees and giving most a hard time. Regardless of all of this, he did do me a solid as a DD when I was pee drunk and out of town aways at an unfamiliar bar. It was maybe 1 AM and the friends I had gone with bailed at some point. I had to work the next morning at 10 AM and had no idea how I was getting home. Some bright idea popped into my head to call my boss at 1 AM when he's got a wife and a kid barely a year old, explain the situation and tell him I probably wouldn't be in tomorrow. Instead of losing his crap, he asked me the name of the bar and said he'd be there within the hour. He comes, picks me up, gets me home and treats the entire ride home like we're old friends and asks all about my night, just being a good fricking sport about it. He also told me his work persona is exclusively for work and apologized for how he acts, but that it's the only way he's going to climb the ranks before he's 40. My drunk mind thought it made sense, so I didn't hassle him about it. I come in the next day, and it's business as usual, but my boss doesn't mention a thing about the prior night, especially given a few coworkers were who bailed on me and he knew it. He got me home, never punished me at work for it, and him being a dong after that steered away from me, which was cool. He ended up taking another job a few months later and leaving, and I didn't find out till recently that it was because he hooked up with another manager and got her pregnant. Sucks for his wife and kids if they found out, but that night he had my back, so I guess it was just the one act of kindness he could muster. I knew a few girls who were drunk driving in Mexico and hit and killed a man on the road, left him there. I hope karma bites them in the butt. The boss and their assistant committed major fraud, embezzlement, and the like a few years back. They're public servants who market themselves as carers for the community. Now, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've built from our company and the community's children. Somehow, a co-worker stumbled upon this deeply hidden information online and then told me, whilst boss was listening in on our conversation. Office speaker system, standard, in our profession. Boss and company were terrified that the knowledge would be, and should have been shared, but my co-worker believed that they would simply wind up slightly demoted and us permanently harassed and fired if the word got out. I figure that a scandal broadcast would be heck fire to the higher ups and gravy for the news stations. Co-worker convinced me that at best, our silence would be job security, though he and I would be sure to refrain for asking for anything. We ain't going down for blackmail, and frankly, the criminals don't have much of anything worthy of it. I heartily agreed to the latter part of his statement. We would simply get to be left alone to plod away at our jobs until we transfer or retire, particularly since the boss regularly harass, demoralize everybody else. Apparently angered by our insistence to remain clean and declining any favors and promotions from the crooks, they've made various attempts to use character assassination and stupid lies to isolate us from any camaraderie or support one usually gets with other co-workers, saying that we're adulterous lovers, or problematic, etc. It's been a tough challenge, but we've managed to create stable and consistent profiles because one by one, staff members start catching on to how evil the bosses really are. Takes them years for some freaking reason. But, while my buddy wants to leave W out making waves, when I do finally break away from this dungeon, I sincerely want to reveal them to the world and see them hit Skid Row. They won't do any jail time, I gather, but their titles, degrees, status, stately houses and bank accounts, 6-digit salaries will be history. TL. DR. Bosses are crooks. Co-worker and I could get them fired. I know someone who's married and has a kid with someone who had stated they probably were in the relationship just for the gifts that the other person bought them: iPad, phone, expensive crap, and they had also said they still loved their ex that treated them like crap even though this new person seemed really nice. Guy I work with steals from work. He is currently building a new house and living with his in-laws. If I turned him in, he would lose his job and not be able to close on his new house, rendering him effectively homeless. I know a girl who slept with her brother when they were in high school. I imagine their respective spouses probably would not care for that. They lied in court. Watched it with my own eyes. It was my bill, and he tried to convince a court my sister tried to commit suicide. That is about as likely as is my flying like Icarus. She would never leave their kids to him. Not even a freaking chance. I think his life should have been ruined, but the stupid asset judge bought it, and he got off. I don't get mad often, but I was pretty pee. If I could ethically publicly frick him up, I would. One of my best friends secretly has pedophilic feelings. Would absolutely never act on them and has cried to me about it before. Very sad. Tell them then they are a great person. They can control their urges and that's what's right to do. I have a co-worker that loves animals to death. She is a vegetarian and has been since she was 6. She shows compassion even for the occasional mouse that is found caught in a trap at work, making sure we dispose of the remains in a respectful way. She has 2 cats that were former strays and a rescue pooch that is both blind and deaf. She's always showing me cute pictures of them all. However, I found out a while ago from a random article online, cracked, that tattoo ink is usually made using animal bones as an ingredient. I feel like if she knew this she would instantly regret the tattoos she's gotten and probably cry for months. I hope she don't find out. This is not at all the kind of life-ruining thing I thought I'd find here. Most people posting things they know about someone that would ruin their lives and they're generally terrible people, but you post about someone so good that knowing their tattoos might come from animals would crush them. I feel like this is eye bleach without actually going to it. I have a relative who cheated on her husband with her boss. Frequently, her husband and her had an awful relationship, the secret affair obviously contributing to that, and it ended in divorce. They both work in the same industry and I have never told anybody about the affair. The cheater in the relationship who is related to me would probably see some repercussions in her business if people knew. One of my friends has had regular sex with their first cousin. Their family would never speak to them again if they knew. I slept with my third cousin by marriage once, maybe twice. I was raped by a high school boyfriend when I was 16. He used handcuffs and did it while my mom was in the house. He is now a millionaire philanthropist, and his stepdad is a famous billionaire businessman philanthropist. I didn't tell anyone for 35 years. I had PTSD for a very long time. Something happened about 9 months ago that triggered my PTSD. I contacted him to let me know how much the rape had affected me. He never wrote back. I did start telling my friends and family, so eventually the word is going to get out there. Well, My in-laws are a real hoot. For starters, I no longer speak to any of them at all. Neither does my wife. Her mother in particular is a master manipulator and will gaslight the crap out of my wife until my mill runs out of breath from being an old, opiate addicted, MRSA in the vagina from triple digit Bayback's harpy. I could go on for hours, literally, about what a piece of human scum my mill is. I have more respect for Jared from Subway than that woman. Then there's my oldest sister-in-law, had an abortion at the age of 14. Only went in for the consultation because she didn't want it, and left being told her only option was to abort because, get this, she did so much see that the fetus had no brain. I crap you not. Fast forward to current day, this bee is a nurse, and still loves her stimulants. Luovziderol, love C, a nurse, a goddamn nurse. She's barebacked more guys than my mill had at her age. Her fiance is also a pedophile, but it's okay because he goes to church and loves Jesus. By pedophile, I don't mean 16-year-olds, I mean toddlers. I really try not to think about them, but it really doesn't help when my SIL opened up the third fraudulent card in my wife's name and had it sent to collections. That just happened this week. My mill's story is really just so sick that it's nigh incapable of belief. The stories my wife tells me about what was done to her when she was a kid would make a grown man cry. At the age of 18 months, my mill legitimately burned the skin off my wife's feet in boiling water for being too loud. Kind of hard to believe until you see the CPS case and the admission of an infant to a trauma level burn unit. My wife's first memory as a child is having her skin boiled off. Although, I suppose this information wouldn't really do too much damage. They're both crappy, miserable people. There are hundreds of men that my mill and SIL have dated and or fricked that can corroborate these things. My wife, on the other hand, was previously a high-profile escort. Her total number of partners in her entire life is less than half of the ones her mill and SIL have barebacked. My wife also liked to keep varied minor details of her transactions, and given the nature of her clients, she could do a lot of damage to the legal system in the area we live in. If you're ever so inclined, I'm sure our Just Mammal would love you. I'm sorry for your wife for her unfortunate genetic coincidences, what I call my favorite family. She sounds like a tough lady. A former friend grew up in an extremely religious family, as in, when I went into his home, I had to follow all the religious crap as if I belonged to the family. You can understand that faith is really important and everyone have to be a perfect Christian and all that. This former friend is the kinkiest pansexual I've ever seen. X3. Picture Stan Smith from American Dad when he discovered he has all the kinks. It was fun experimenting some kinks with him though. Oh, and he's a former friend because we eventually grew apart. I never outed him and never will. He made me promise to never tell and I always try to keep my promises. My old band director was gay and had crushes on the boys in the band. Eventually some texts surfaced and were reported to the school. There was an investigation of the incident. He did nothing technically illegal, and the school allowed him to silently resign. He was very close with his students, hung out with them outside of school, etc. So most people now know something weird was going on. But a few people knew how truly weird he was, including me. I think he got what was coming to him. I briefly dated a guy a few years back. Let's call him Jake. Jake and I were together for a few months before I found out that Jake was in another relationship with someone who was not me. He had a fiancée who was pregnant with his child. Obviously I called off our relationship when I found out, but I never ended up telling his fiancée for fear that she would lash out at me. Knew her from school. She was that type. Fast forward a year and I get a random message from Jake talking about how frisky he was and he sent me a video of him jerking off. I told him to never contact me again or else this video is going straight to his fiancée who is currently pregnant with their second child. Not only would this ruin their relationship, but this is also a very small town and he is a prominent member of the community. It would be talk of the town if anyone found out. One of my exes tried killing herself multiple times in my house and she is currently in the army. She would be psych DQ'd if they knew or found out. My mother, who is a teacher, once joked about using a certain student as a human shield in the event of a school shooting. She's not a good person. Sometimes I wonder if I should let the administrator of her school know. Joke's on her. Most automatic weapons would have no trouble going through the shield and into her. God, that's morbid. Religious ex-friend had a thing for several of her students while working in a junior high class. That's part of why she quit her job, because she was afraid that she may be tempted to act on those feelings. She would also masturbate at the school in the classroom and bathroom while on lunch. She has been recently a church youth camp counselor. She tried to jump out of a moving vehicle on the highway to kill herself because she was so drunk and I wouldn't let her hook up with people at a club again. Stumbling drunk and the people were acting nuts. I would love to report or put her, but when I made her go to the hospital for threatening to kill herself on another occasion, I was told to leave by her family and that I didn't know jack crap about her. She lied and said that the threats on her life never happened. I wouldn't be believed. I know they are a troll, a really awful one. I also know where they work. I know their family. I see his girlfriend almost every week and I know how both would feel about him if they knew. I haven't said a word even though, reading what he writes sometimes, I really want to. Sometimes I think his girlfriend has a right to know how the person she shares her bed with really thinks of women, or that his boss has a right to know what his employee really thinks about his faith. Part of me thinks he deserves the fallout, after all those are his words. But I believe in an open internet. I'm trying not to compromise my principles because he is a horrible human being. But again, sometimes it's really freaking hard. Just create a throwaway and reply to one of their posts with information that lets them know you know. When you go to X bar on Friday after working as a Y, you might find someone told your girlfriend Z. The fire department that I volunteer at has just gone through our annual elections for board members. This year's president is also the person who was awarded Firefighter of the Year. A little over a year ago he got so drunk that he fell asleep at the wheel, was arrested, blew over double the legal limit despite not having anything to drink for at least 4 hours, and was charged on 10 different counts, 4 of which were alcohol related. He didn't tell any higher ranking members until 2 months after the fact, when he had an interlock installed for a year to avoid a harsher punishment. Those that know have not told the rest of the membership and even approved him going through emergency vehicle operator school while his POV had an interlock still on it. Some of the members who don't know about this are well respected and even looked up to, like federal agents and military folks with strong personal integrity, let alone professional integrity. They have vocally been very against drunk driving and yet they think he is a great person and stand-up individual. I haven't said anything because before this last year I would have considered him a good friend, and 1, I didn't want him to kill himself if I ratted. He's deaf and diagnosed manic depressive. And 2, I thought the leadership would deal with him appropriately. I know I have to say something, but I am not as well liked as him because I don't brown nose the leadership, so they will probably actually be mad at me for bringing this up. Anyway, he's been really dialing up his buddy routine with those strong integrity guys I mentioned before, but if they knew then they might not only unfriendly him, literally, but they might pursue punitive actions. Send everyone, including yourself and the drunkard, a letter stating all the facts and details of the situation. Also state in the letter that everyone is receiving the same letter, then it can't be ignored. A friend of mine let another dude have oral sex with his wife and the wife went behind his back to the dude for seconds and they all got a STD, including the dude's girlfriend, and after that they are still cool today. Dude even married the chick after this. She lied on her hiring forms. She copied her credentials from someone else. Not like a little white lie like can dunk in basketball, but more like X amount of years working as a director of a school. If it came out, she would A, lose her job, B, never allow her to work in education again, C, completely frick her over. She did this by asking someone else to see their credentials and literally copying and pasting their information. She's a complete B who is the epitome of the word. She disowned her son after he came out citing religion as her reason. Cheated on her husband with a priest. She stayed but priest had to leave after it came out. Both still working in the church. Lies about wrongdoings of children and getting them in trouble with their parents. Was cited as the reason as to why the nicest woman I've ever met quit her job. B was promoted over nicest woman ever. Nicest woman had to work under her for well over a year before she quit. Only reason we, dad and I, haven't ratted her out and make her lose her job. It would also cause one of my dad's friends to lose her job and all the ramifications that B would get, friend would get as well. It's a catch-22. If it weren't for that, B would have gone down a long time ago. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.